Have you ever wished that there was one farm to get every single dye in the game of Minecraft? Me too, but the perfect dye farm didn't exist, so I made one. This universal dye farm puts small flower farms to shame. It produces every dye in the game at one location. The rates change from a minimum of over 600 green dye per hour to over 4,000 purple dye per hour. Best of all, you can AFK every single color at these rates here at the farm, so you'll never have to refill bone meal for your farm to produce items. What's up people, I'm Potato Noir, and today I want to showcase my incredibly powerful all-dye farm. The farm works by having a bone meal supply line, which is powered by this bone meal farm at the top, and all these items drop down into a chute. These items will travel on a circuit that is fueling all of the color production that can be powered by bone meal, and eventually they'll drop and go down to this other farm down here, and then once they have passed every single farm that can be powered by bone meal, they'll get sent up into the storage system right here and go into the chest for white dye. I wanted to make an updated visual guide for you guys, so I went ahead and remade this old dye chart in a similar fashion to a way that it's been done before, and I'm making that available in the description if you want to download it. I spent a lot of time on this, probably more than I should have, but it gives a really good representation of where all you can get each individual dye now that 1.20 has been dropped. So to make this less complicated, let me just explain how the farm produces each individual color along with the rates and how else you can get this dye. First off, we have pink dye. The farm makes about 2,784 of this pink dye per hour, and it does use a bone meal supply to do this, and you can see what this looks like in the chest. One thing to note, crafting each of these peonies will give you 2 pink dyes, so picture all of this and double it for the amount of actual pink dye you'd have, and that's this number right here. The station that we have producing pink is right here, and you can see that represented by these pink colors. And I've tried to color code this where I can so that you'll have a nice little visual guide for where each farm is at. But the pink dye is grown by the peony bush in the Too Tall flower farm, and this is a very simplistic design that uses bone meal to make more of these. So pink is one of the 6 colors up here on this level that is powered by this one clock in the middle. And so we just have a line that's running to each of these dispensers and also the system over here for the sea pickle farm. And what that's doing is it's essentially optimizing the flow of bone meal for each of these farms so that each one won't use more than is being supplied into the top. What this does is it allows us to keep all the bone meal in these systems right here so that the farm will continue to produce and you can switch it instantly to any other farm that you'd like. Each of these Too Tall farms are started by unpowering this dropper, whereupon it will begin bone mealing the peonies or other flowers and then sending them out from the bottom in the collection item stream. So as you can see, this collection item stream runs along the bottom of each of these systems. It actually wets the farmland as well, and all of the items starting with the sea pickles will actually run in this item collection circuit that is directly underneath the bone meal circuit above. And these are the only 2 item circuits that are flowing in the farm, and they'll be pushed out here and go into storage. So every time this clock runs, down below here we'll have an observer that'll give a pulse 2 times for every 1 circuit above, and what this will do is ensure that there's no items that ever end up in any of these droppers down here. This will make sure that there are never any droppers in the items down here since it's cycling 2 times the rate that they're being produced above. And to turn each of these flower farms off, you just power this again so that this dispenser won't be being activated. Pink dye can also be produced by pink petals and pink tulips, and also by crafting red and white dye on a crafting table. Next up, we have Magenta, which uses the exact same items per hour, also uses bone meal supply, and is also one of the Too Tall farms that is shown above. My farm uses the Too Tall lilac to produce these, although you can also get them from alliums, if I'm saying that right, and by a few different crafting shapes as shown on this table. And once again, this is what the items look like that the farm makes in an hour, and remember that these will also be doubled for the amount of magenta dye. Next up, we have purple dye. The farm makes 4,076 per hour, which is the highest number of any individual dye on the farm without making more bone meal going into it. And this is done by crafting blue and red dye together, so it'll essentially give you double since it'll produce 2 purple for every 1 blue and 1 red. So you'd run the farm for 1 hour and get 2,000 blue, and then you'd run the farm for 1 more hour and get 2,700 red, and you combine those, and then that will give you this number right here. It's literally impossible currently to get purple dye from any other source other than crafting red and blue dye. Now we have blue, which is about 20,038 per hour on average. And the reason this is an average is because the farm placement for this matters. This is actually a pretty difficult farm to obtain if you want a farm that'll just produce blue dye, because the only way to get it is from cornflowers and lapis lazuli. And lapis lazuli is not renewable farming unless you want to deal with villagers, and that's a terrible idea. So instead, down here we have the raised works version of a pretty standard flower farm design. And the way this is activated is by this lever right here. This will produce a bunch of flowers and is situated at the exact spot in a flower forest to produce the two colors that we need, which is why the farm has to be in a flower forest if you want these two dyes. So if you can see, this farm is actually situated on the exact divide between where blue flowers generate in the flower forest and where the oxeye daisies generate in the flower forest. And the blue dye, the cornflowers will give you blue dye, and the oxeye daisies will give you light gray dye. This is good because it gives you two dyes in one with just one flower farm, and actually produces quite a lot of both. So once all those flowers are sorted, this is about how many cornflowers you would get per hour if you built exactly halfway between the two biomes. In reality, this might vary a little bit depending on where exactly you place the farm, but if you place it pretty close to halfway, you can expect an average of around this many flowers. Next we have light blue, which the farm makes about 3,400 per hour of, and this is made by crafting blue and white together, which uses the bone meal supply for both. The only other way you can get this is actually with the blue orchid flower, which only grows in swamp biomes, so it's not actually possible to farm that with this one location here, but that's okay because we can just craft it from blue and white. And if you craft those items, then this is about how many you will get, and so it makes actually quite a bit, 3,400 per hour once you adjust the rates to be doubled from the two inputs. And next up we have Cyan dye, which the farm makes more than 1,208 per hour. I put this sign here because you can expand this cactus farm if you like, but with the current setup we have here, it's giving just around 1,200 items per hour, and this is done by crafting green and blue, and also uses the bone meal supply for this. Yes, automatic pitcher plant farms now exist, but in order to use them, you have to have a supply of pitcher plant seeds being fed into that farm, which just becomes a really big headache and a massive build with sniffers and all other kinds of mobs and villagers and things. So to make things simple, we just use the green and blue that we're already creating in the farm, and this is much easier and it still gives you a lot every hour. And once you'd crafted that, this is about what it would look like for each hourly rate. Now we have the most annoying color out of all the ones here, which is green, and is done by cactus farming. The setup I have gives the least amount of items per hour for the rate, which is still more than 9 stacks, which was my target item rate per hour for each color, but it will just be a little bit limited because cactus grows really slow. So this cactus farm will grow independently of all the other farms in the system, and down here in the collection system I actually have an option to either turn that cactus into bone meal and send it into the bone meal stream, which is this water stream right here, or if you'd like you can flick this lever and it will turn into the normal cactus block item and flow out this way, which will go and get delivered into the item stream right here. So right now I don't have this cactus being automatically smelted. I have made a really awesome video about a bamboo farm super smelter that will smelt all of this in just over 2 minutes flat. So you could build that bamboo farm in one of these chunks right here that'll be loaded, so that if you AFK for this farm, you'd also be AFKing the bamboo, and that would help you smelt all this really quickly. Now for lime green, we have a few options here. I have an original sea pickle farm that gets about 2,200 items per hour, or if you want to just craft green dye and white dye, it'll make you a little bit less, but you won't have to build this build right here that I'll show you. So this is the small sea pickle farm that I've designed, and the way this works is it is also powered by the bone meal stream going into this hopper right here, which will bone meal the sea pickle on top of this block and potentially produce a few sea pickles on these horizontal coral blocks. And once the sea pickles are made, they will be scraped off and sent into the collection system down below, as you see here. I made this farm because there really wasn't a good intermediate sea pickle farm that wasn't really massive and still produced a positive amount of sea pickles to bone meal ratio. All the other farm designs that are small had a really terrible bone meal to sea pickle rate. But this one inputs about 1,700 per hour bone meal and outputs about 2,200 sea pickles per hour, so the rates are pretty good for the size. And the on-off switch for that is just right here, so you can cycle that off if you'd like. So here in this chest we have the amount of sea pickles that you get from AFK for 1 hour, and in the chest above you have the amount of lime dye that you would get if you're crafting green and white for 1 hour. So there's actually not any other ways to get lime dye besides sea pickles or crafting green and white. Next up we have yellow, which the farm produces again about 2700 per hour, and this is done by using the 2 tall sunflower block, which is another 2 tall flower farm that you can see right up there. And this uses bone meal supply and will give you around the same amount of sunflowers as we saw before for the pink and magenta. And once again, this number will be doubled for the actual amount of yellow dye you could craft out of all these. The only other way you get yellow dye is actually by dandelions, which grow in plains biomes. Next up we have orange. We're actually producing this by crafting yellow and red together, and the reason we're not using a torch flower farm is the same reason we weren't using the pitcher plant farm, which is in order to have an automatic torch flower farm you have to have a steady input of torch flower seeds. So that is actually currently difficult to make and a really big hassle that we don't want to do. So we're making around 2784, which is the average that you get for running this for an hour and that for an hour, and then dividing that by 2. And so this also uses bone meal supply, and this is around the amount of orange dye you would get from doing that. And red is also the same story, with the rosebush being a 2 tall flower farm right up there. It works the same way as the others I've described, and also uses the bone meal supply and gives you about this many, and this would also be doubled for the amount of red dye you would craft from each of these. You can also get red dye by poppies, beetroots, and red tulips, which is one of the variations that is also found on this flower forest. Brown is a little bit more interesting. We're running about 1100 per hour from this, and the only way to get brown is by cocoa beans farm, which actually needs the player to AFK above, and I'll show you that in a second. And this uses bone meal, and this is the rough amount of cocoa beans that we're getting per hour of that farm, which is optimized for the amount of bone meal that is coming in from the bone meal farm. So because this cocoa bean farm uses 2 bone meal every time a cocoa bean is grown, it actually has to be halved for the amount of times that it cycles on this clock. So that's done by a T flip-flop right back here. And the rest of this is just 2 dispensers facing next to a jungle log where the player will AFK right here and hold right click. And then if you press F3 and T, this will reload your shaders and let you keep holding right click. And the whole time that you do this, you can leave the keyboard and just AFK right here. And the cocoa seeds will get put into the player's inventory where you can keep AFKing this farm indefinitely. And this is all the back of this little mini farm right here. Next we have one of the most difficult dyes to obtain, which is black dye. And you can do this by either having a squid farm, or if you want to farm the dye at this location, you can build a simple wither rose farm, which I will show below. And what this does is uses a nether farm to produce mobs so that they'll be killed by the wither, and then the roses will be sent up here. And the current farm I'm running is producing around this many wither roses per hour, and let me show you how that works real quick. So this item elevator right here is taking the bone meal from this portion of the farm, but it also goes down to where the wither is kept at a secure location at the bottom of the world, so that if it does somehow get out, it will not affect the rest of your farm and you can kill it before it goes all the way up there. So down here we have my simplistic wither cage farm, and this may seem very scary to you at first, but I promise it's really easy to get set up. This is inspired by this video, which is a tutorial of an Ilmango design for a wither cage, but I've actually modified the soul sand and water underneath here, and this is to better align the wither skulls. Just suffice it to say that this design is a little bit more stable than the video that is in the description, so I've had to modify that for this farm. Also, my design lets the wither and the iron golem be rendered in the same chunk, so this is really good so that you won't load the wither chunk before the iron golem chunk, which will make the wither bug out and potentially shoot wither skulls everywhere. And this design also reliably separates the skulls from the main head, which will fly down over here. And eventually, once a blue skull is spawned, it will kind of carve out this little path that you see behind here, and it will not hit the iron golem and will be completely safe and not destroy your farm up here. And what's happening right here is that this is the final destination for mobs in a nether ceiling farm that will go through a portal up top and then drop down here. And then these mobs will be killed by the wither skulls, and their items will be sent out into this water stream and be taken up here to the rest of the farm. So what nether farm you build here really depends on the nether biome that is on the other side of that dimension right here. Right here I'm showcasing a hoglin farm. So this is another design by Raiseworks, which I will show. What's on the other side of this portal is a hoglin farm, which is my modifications to a Raiseworks hoglin farm. And you can see that this works by having a pretty big spawning platform with 2 chutes. And so you can see that this works by hoglins actually being scared by the warped fungus, and they'll actually fall down into the pit right here, and they'll be caught on fire so that they'll be turned into mostly cooked pork chops for you, and then be transported through the portal to the other side to be killed by the wither. I'll show you the numbers for exactly how many cooked pork chops and leather and other items this gives per hour. So let's let this run for a few minutes so I can show you what the other side looks like once it's more full. Alright, so I just ran the farm for about 5 minutes, and so we'll go through and I'll show you exactly how this works on the other side. So let's go into Spectator, and you can see that the hoglins are being dropped down. They do convert into zoglins eventually, but they'll actually be killed, and all their items will be sent out through this drop chute, which includes wither roses, which will be pushed up to the item collection system. The great thing about this alignment is that all the skulls will travel through the gap in these blocks, which will even damage all the babies, and they can't get out and will actually be very reliable and send all those items in this stream. So this is about the number of wither roses that this farm will produce every hour, and wither roses are much more useful than ink in general, so you can also make wither skull farms out of these and just use them if you ever have need. And down here at the overflow system of the farm, we have a few overflow chests, and this is all the items I got from 1 hour of AFKing at the hoglin farm, and there's even more that were pushed into here before they were sent down. So this is just a ridiculous amount of bonus drops that you would get. And this hoglin farm was built because there's a crimson forest directly on the other side of the nether. If this was a nether waste, you'd be getting gold here from all the zombie pigmen. And if it was a basalt delta, you'd be getting magma cream from all the magma cubes. And so the rate for the wither roses will vary just a little bit depending on which farm you have. The only biome I recommend you find a new spot for the farm would be if there is a soul sand valley on the other side. You could build a ghast farm, but it'd be very difficult to transport those to the overworld. And it's theoretically possible, but it's probably a little bit more difficult than most. So I wouldn't recommend building it in that nether biome, but every other one you could build a farm on the other side that's very simple. So in my testing world, I was actually running this using Enix of Forge Gold Farm, and having this portal go to the portal above the wither, just like I showed you before, and this will actually give you a massive amount of wither roses, and even more so than the hoglin or the magma cube farms would. So there's a lot of nether roof farms designs that you could use, and it'd be pretty easy to adapt them to just send them in that chute above the wither. One thing I will mention is that it's very important to have this whole area be lit up so that no mobs can spawn down here. And this would be bad if something tried to attack the wither and made it lose its focus. But really the only area that you'd have to worry about this is this little tunnel that it'll dig. It will dig down to bedrock, so you won't have to worry about that. But just make sure you have a torch or two be put in just so that whenever it digs out more, a mob won't actually be able to be spawned. This is so that if the blue skulls dig out a little bit more space and becomes unlit, that the mob won't actually be able to travel all the way back to your farm here. So just make sure that you're lighting this up periodically, or you dig out this tunnel a little bit more to where that you can light it all up when the skulls will hit bedrock and you won't have to worry about anything. If that's too much for you, you can just farm this at a squid farm, but there's probably not going to be a suitable site for that next to this specific spot in the flower forest for the flowers that you have to farm here. So if you choose that route, you'll probably end up farming this somewhere else. Next we have the gray, and this one is produced by crafting black and white. There's no other way to get this gray dye currently in 1.20. The rate for this will depend on the rates for black and white, and is averaging about 18,054 per hour in this setup, and this is using the Crimson Forest Hoglin farm for the black dye. And this gray does use the bone meal supply for the white dye. And this is what the amount of gray dye will look like in 1 hour. Now for light gray, this is getting around 2,000 per hour average, and this is using this farm down here with the oxide daisies that we've already covered, and is turned on by this lever. This is the amount of those flowers that will be produced on average every hour for the double flower farm at the bottom. The only ways to get gray dye are the oxide daisy, which is shown here, or the azure bluette, or the white tulip, ironically. You can also get this by crafting gray and white, or black and 2 white in a crafting table. And finally, the white is 1700 per hour in my original bone meal farm, and this is automatic and is supplying all these other farms as we've already covered. And this is the amount of bone meal that will be outputted by my bone meal farm, which I have a whole video on, and you should totally go watch. And the only ways to get white dye is by crafting bone meal, or also farming lily of the valleys in this flower forest right here. Woo, man, that was a lot. You could say I'm dying. I'd just like to apologize for that. So that's each individual dye and how my farm makes it. So let's jump into the tutorial so I can show you how to make this. So the first step in building the farm is to find yourself a flower forest like this, and you can do that the traditional way in game, or you can use this website called Chunkbase if you feel like that's not cheating. You can do it either way, however you like. Next, you're going to want to find the part of the flower forest where there's a dividing line between the oxeye daisy and the cornflower. This usually isn't too hard to find, but sometimes generation can be weird, so you might end up going to another one, whatever works for you. Generally, a nice, fairly flat space is preferable. So if you know for a fact that you're wanting to get the wither rose drops at this farm, go ahead and build another portal before you start building anything. What this will do is show you what kind of biome you're dealing with on the other side. So let's go through and see. So this is a warped forest, and as I'll show later, the warped forest might not be the best choice unless you want to build the wither rose system in the sky, because whenever the endermen will come on this side of the dimension, they'll be trying to teleport when the wither's attacking them. So if you want to build that in the sky, it'd be much easier to teleport proof the chamber where the wither is, but otherwise I would select another biome for this farm and try to find a different flower forest if you can. Otherwise, if that's too much work, you can always do squid farm. So to build the farm, you're going to want to start out by, hold up, wait a second, don't start yet. Let's be honest here. I don't want to have to make a tutorial for this giant monstrosity, and you don't want to have to spend hours and hours doing it. There's a way better way to build this than alt-tabbing repeatedly for hours and hours until you finally get this right, and that would be a wonderful mod called Half+Litematica. Now I know what you're thinking, this isn't vanilla Minecraft, how could you do this? Well, let me share a secret with you. If you've ever seen any big content creator on YouTube building a giant build, this is 100% what they're using. It's actually quite impossible to build really complex things in survival Minecraft and plan them in survival Minecraft. It's really difficult. So everyone uses this and they save themselves hours of their time, so you should too. Now there's a lot of tutorials for Half+Litematica out there, so I won't go into the details on this, but you can look some of those up on YouTube, and they're actually very easy. Alright, so here's the top of our farm, so let's load that, and voila! Whoa, look at that. It's a whole template on how to build the entire farm, and you don't need a tutorial to do it. That's crazy. So all the tutorials will show you it's really easy to get this schematic placement up and running, and you can move around the whole schematic to put it exactly where you want. And all you have to do is put that exactly on the part of the flower forest where the flower farm at the bottom will be exactly halfway between the cornflowers and the oxeye daisies. And then you can just go ahead and start building. See, look. It's literally the easiest thing. You just start filling in the schematic and it tells you if the block is wrong or not. I can 100% guarantee you that installing Half+Litematica, doing that, going through that whole process, and then building this is going to be faster than watching any video that I could make and then trying to build it screen by screen. So yeah, check this out. If you have any problems, let me know. I'll drop a link to a few tutorials that seem helpful in the description so that I don't completely leave you guys out in the wild, but this has saved me hours and possibly even days of my time by using this mod. So once you have the top part completed, you can leave it as is if you want to build a squid farm instead of the wither rose farm. Actually right here, there might be a pretty suitable spot in this river. So if you do want to build the wither rose farm, I have a separate schematic for that, which is this right here. And there's a few things you need to know before building this, and that is you have to pay attention to chunk borders, because as it is, each chunk is going to be a little bit different around where your farm is. So right here I have this water bubble stream. This would represent the very bottom of the farm. I have this aligned with the part on the farm right here, which is this bubble column, just so that you can see where the chunks will be. So in this setup, if you just pasted the schematic like it is here, the wither would actually be in a separate chunk from the iron golem. What you want to do is you want to just move this a little bit to where the wither and the iron golem will be in the same chunk, and to where this nether portal will be approximately right in the center of this farm here. And what they'll do is just ensure that the nether portal will act as a chunk loader, making sure that all the entities will be able to be put into storage right here where they should be going. If you have that portal a little ways away, there's a chance that it might not load some of the entities that are going into the chest on this end or this end. In my second cat porter video, which you can find here, I have a little explanation on how chunk loaders work, so you can watch that to see exactly where you could put this. Alright, so I went ahead and adjusted this for the slight differences in chunk location. So as you can see, the wither is inside this chunk, the golem is also inside this chunk, and if we go up, we can see that this chunk is approximately the center of the dye farm. Also, me moving that has just pushed this elevator over a few from where the schematic is. Just know that this elevator needs to connect to the one up top. And this also will double as a player elevator, so you can actually take this up from the bottom, and there we go, here's the space up top where you'll get out at. And I've gone ahead and added a drop chute to where the player can drop down to where this area is. And we got some powdered snow underneath here to reduce the fall damage. So to properly summon the Wither, we do this exactly the same way as they show on the video I've already shown, but you can follow that along here or follow along with me. What you want to do is waterlog all of these walls real quick, and then you're going to block up 3 blocks from right here. Put a slab here, slab over here, and make kind of a plus pattern for these slabs. And then you can go ahead and remove these. And then on these 2 blocks, you're going to place another slab and then place 3 candles on top of here and on top of here. And then you can go ahead and delete these blocks, place a boat, and then push it right in between both of these 2 candles. Shift out, and then you're going to place a honey block directly next to them on either side. And what this is doing is aligning the boat's hitbox exactly to where it won't move out of this one position. Next, you want to go ahead and put a block on top and put a lantern underneath. This is also going to hold the boat's hitbox in so that it don't go up. Then you can remove this block right here. Go ahead and add back in these slabs on either side, just like so, to where it forms a plus shape. So I was actually just testing this out in Survival Minecraft, and there are a few kinks that I actually had to work out right at the last minute here. So the level of all of these soul sand elevators is exactly 4 blocks up on all of these water spots right here. But the thing is, whenever you first spawn in the Wither, the water that is actually being poured down around this slab here would make the initial skulls hit the golem instead of going back for the main head. So what I've done is I've actually added an extra little row of soul sand right here, and I'll update the schematic for you guys in the video with this. And this is a 3 high level of bubbles on this very last row here. So in this initial stage, when there's this water right here that you haven't taken out yet, the main head skull was actually flowing down and hitting the golem. So that's what this extra bubble stream does, is it pushes it back up just a little bit at the very end to where it'll be above his head here. And whenever we take out this water, it'll still be above his head, but not hitting the hoppers. All right, let's reset this. Get out of here. All right, so I'm gonna show you the foolproof way to spawn this thing in survival. This has taken me quite a few trials and errors, but I finally got the process completely safe for you to do as long as you follow these instructions. So first off, whenever you approach the spawning platform, you're gonna wanna make sure that all of these walls are waterlogged, this leaf is waterlogged, and these leaves right here are waterlogged as well. You're also gonna want to make sure, if I can show up here, that this lantern is in place and that all 4 of these slabs are on either side of this initial square. These are all very, very important details. And of course, we can't forget our golem back here, who also needs to be in place and ready to go. This obsidian right here will stay in place whenever the Wither blows up, meaning that we won't get water everywhere and it'll be easy to move around, how I'll show you in just a second. So to get this done in survival, you're going to place the blocks right here after you've double checked all this, and you're going to go ahead and place the Wither skulls, place the water bucket, and then bravely run away so that the Wither won't target you. And you're going to actually want to run quite a ways away, and this is just so that the Wither will make sure to target the golem instead of yourself. So if we can see, the main head is on us for a little bit, and he might be shooting skulls off just slightly off, but he will eventually turn his attention back to the golem and be shooting the skulls over there. Get out of my way. See, so the main head's still targeting us, so we probably have to be a little ways farther away. And see, now the main head has started targeting the golem, so those main head skulls are getting sent back down there like they should be. So now we are safe to go back to where the Wither is. And if you're doing this completely underground, you could just build a normal tunnel a ways away so that you can just wait it out. You just want to wait until he's targeting this guy to get close and start doing your thing. And as you can see, I'm getting right close to him and he's not doing anything. The next step you want to do is remove this water bucket right here. And you can remove the water sources here, here, and get that. And get this one. And there you go. You don't really have to do that, but it just looks a little bit nicer. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to get a dispenser set up, and this will actually make him break this block right here. And let's get that put in just right here like so. And then you want to put some snowballs in here and then just put this lever on. And so that will make him actually break that slab. And there you go. And so now we can look at his hitbox. It's perfectly contained in by the boat here, and it's sitting exactly where it needs to be. All the skulls are going exactly where they need to be, and he should not aggro you. So yeah, that's how you do that in survival. You should not log out and log back in when you're right here next to the farm. The wither may target you whenever you do that, so you just want to make sure that you're not logging out and logging back in whenever you're standing within range of the wither. And so what you could do in this biome is you could take this portal and go all the way up to the bedrock ceiling, and there's lots of tutorials about how to do that online, and make a farm that's really similar to this one right here, in which you would go ahead and AFK way up here, and the Enderman will get spawned in and try and attack this Endermite. That was a little too high there. There we go. This farm won't output quite as much as a hoglin or the zombified piglin farm. However, there's still a lot of Endermen going through here, and they'll get transported instantly, so it's actually pretty good rates on this. And what I have here is literally just an Endermite in a boat sitting on top of a portal so that all these guys will run in and get it. Alright, so let's go through this and see about how the farm's doing on the other side. We should be getting a lot of Endermen coming through. It won't look exactly the same, but they should be falling through pretty much the same as the hoglins are. Oh no! Oh no! So if you do have a wart forest on the other side, you could actually build this way up in the sky, and that would actually be much better for spawn proofing for the Enderman, and it would still work and give you your same drops. You just have, instead of this going up, it'd be going down and have a little pipe there. So yeah, note to self, if you have wart forest, build this in the sky. So yeah, that's pretty much about everything I can think of. I know the Wither Rose portion of this farm can be a bit challenging, but I just wanted to show that it is possible to farm every single die in the game at one location and get pretty good rates for everything. So you may or may not even want to build that module down there, but I just wanted to show some options about what you're working with, what you may want to consider when building this into certain flower forests and certain nether biome that goes along with it. So that's all I have, yeah. Leave a comment down below about what you liked about the farm, or any improvements or suggestions or cool things you thought about. So we're actually getting really close to 1,000 Spudscribers, and yes, that is what I'm calling you guys, so you have to accept it. I don't usually like asking for subscribers, but if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe and tell me what you enjoyed about the farm down below. As always, I'll try and answer all your questions if you have any issues or anything as best I can, and I'll leave the schematic and the world download in the description. Alright, I'll catch you next time. Let's hit that outro.